Okay, so the purpose of this video I plan to make is to is though it won't have like any clear points, but it's trying to it's where I will try to explain how I one way I kind of know or get a sense of I wouldn't say no because this is just giving some clues, but this is a video that will talk about how I get clues into how print runs were during particular eras and how they compare to each other. Because contrary to what many people are thinking now, that population absolutely don't matter much in Pokemon products, especially in chases, and people who believe that Pokemons with high, like cards with high population, will keep being expensive as long as the card's good. I can tell you, I do not think at all that is the case, and I think that these people are being way too overconfident at Pokemon investing in specifically single cards and such. So today this video is just really about how I use population report to kind of get an idea of how much boxes were being printed, and also at the same time how these chases were being graded and how many chases were being like how boxes are being opened and how many chases are being graded. So let's first start to look at Roaring Skies. So Roaring Skies is a set that is released in 2015. So it was the fifth or sixth set of XY. And so it was special because it was a set with a very strong meta card known as the Shaman EX, so 77, I believe. But the issue was that card surged in price so much because of its competitive use. So to the point where like a common Shaman card got to $100 a piece. So then the issue was that there's not enough of this copy of cards. So Pokemon eventually in 2017, I believe around beginning of that time, decided to reprint this set along with Primal Clash and Asia Origins. And so after the reprint happened, the market absolutely collapsed from and these cards go back to all pretty cheap because the players all got what they wanted, which is a Shaman EX, enough copies of that. So but after that, Pokemon stopped printing it, and so right now as we know, the market's completely different now because we all have a ton of collectors. Like the amount of collectors in the space has completely overshadowed the amount of players, and of course the older cards you can't use them anymore. So of course they'll also go down in price. So right now the chase in this set is Mega Rayquaza, or Rayquaza, basically all the Rayquazas with any Rayquaza is basically a chase, like 4R Rayquaza, 4R Mega Rayquaza, etc., etc. Yeah. So let's take a look at the chases here and the population, right? So here, for example, we have the first Mega Rayquaza EX. I believe this is just the common one, but because even the common run is so rare, we can see that its price now is really high. And because also considering at that time when the players were dominating the market, they were using this card as one of the Skyfield deck. So basically, this card, right, they were playing it, and so there's not a lot of graded copies. So as we can see, with the population, we have just not a lot of tens, way less tens, and just you can see out of 1503, actually, not just to mention tens, just tens and nines only comprise of like 30% of the amount of total graded copies. So this shows that really the natural attrition of the card's condition has occurred because of the players at that time. And so you can imagine at that time people were opening the box, and the box really did get quite scarce, but it was because the players wanted specifically 76, which is Shaman EX, to be able to use that card to in their deck, right? Because every deck, a lot of the decks, well, most deck actually need the 4 Shaman EX to really be competitive. So we can now look at all the other Rayquaza. So again, most Rayquaza EX, there is a lot of copies out there, but the problem is most of these copies were played, and so the gradable ones, as we can see, is not a lot. And similarly with the, the Chase Mega Rayquaza EX, I think the Mega Rayquaza EX, this 70 something might be the full art or something. And then so here we have 1,000 copies graded. Again, not a lot of PSA 10 at all. 76 as well, same goes. And also 104 here. Again, not a lot at all. There's just a tiny amount of 10s. And we have 105. I think this is the biggest chase for Mega Rayquaza, the secret one. And yeah, that one is graded the most, right? Because it's the most valuable. Because again, the cards which are not as valuable, people don't grade as much. But here you see, this card is pretty valuable, so more people want to grade it because the 10 exponentially increased this card's value. So considering the number of 10, just keep in mind that this 2,000 something is hardly comparable to what we have now. So what we have now is things like the Moonbreon, things like the the Surging Spark Pikachu, the 151 Charizard. These are chases, right? These are top chases. And you can see that those top chases have PSA 10 prices pretty expensive, right? The Charizard is 1,000, I believe, and the Moonbreon is like 3,000 or something. Now, so when you look back at like the Secret Mega Rayquaza EX, and you look at their price is, I don't even know what their price now. I presume it's something like around close to 10K. I don't think personally it is outrageous at all that the price here is 10K for this particular card in a 10, because if you consider the Moonbreon, how many PSA 10 does it have? It has like 15,000, right? 15,000 10s. But here is so you compare it to here, it's like almost just 100x, like more than 100x of the pop of PSA 10 to it. So any amount of kind of demand, as we can see right now, we have the mega sets coming, right? So any amount of small demand, going back to look at these old mega cards, you obviously know that this will push the PSA 10 prices up exponentially. So I do think that this current price of 10K for this kind of card, it is not surprising, but at the same time, it is a very volatile. So cards like that I wouldn't still buy, but it is also understandable, in my opinion, that the card can rise up to that kind of level. So I see a lot of people who are surprised that this can happen, but in my opinion, this is just the natural occurrence when the demand is so high for just a few cards, like 100 something cards in the entire market, right? And some might just, most of them I would say is already permanently put into someone's collection. So maybe there's only 3 or 4 out there that people are willing to sell at a given time, right? So yeah, now considering how much chases were graded, it really also tells us that while this box was printed a lot, we also need to consider that most of these boxes were opened for the Shaymin EX, and so there's really not much left. And for all that's left of this box, yes, it did crash to $70 or $80 at 2018 or so, but for what is left of this box, it was pretty abundant at the time of Sun and Moon, and that's only because people didn't treat these boxes as investable, right? And so eventually, when the time crosses to 2020 and suddenly people want the box, this box already went up already, right? So next we look at something like Breakpoint. I think this is Breakpoint, right? Breakpoint, yes. So Breakpoint is released around after 2016. Yeah, 2016. So it's released before Evolutions and Steam Siege. So I believe Steam Siege is XY11, Evolution is XY12. So Breakpoint must be XY10 or 9, one of them. Actually, no, 9 or 8, because Phase Collide is XY10. So Breakpoint and Breakthrough, one of them is XY9 and one of them is XY10. So this is around the time where Pokemon started to print more in general, and just throughout 2016 and 2016 to the beginning of 2017 towards the end of 2017 basically. This is when Pokemon printed more because of the Pokemon Go surge. So Pokemon Go surge is a boom that was like that happened because of the Pokemon Go app, of course, and then but it was just a general surge of Pokemon, not specific to trading card, but there's a lot of spillover from other areas of Pokemon into the TCG, and you can see this from just in general the kind of response from the Pokemon company by printing evolutions exponentially more, anticipating for this kind of like demand. And indeed there was a surge in demand, but overall what happened with the Pokemon company is that they overestimated this surge in demand and actually overprinted the last 4 or 5 sets of the XY era, specifically being Breakpoint, Breakthrough, Fates Collide, Steam Siege, and Evolution. So one way to see this is if you look at Sun and Moon collection boxes, so any box in the Sun and Moon, like a lot of the collection box in the Sun and Moon, you will always see in those boxes, the packs are not all Sun and Moon packs. There's a lot of packs that are from X and Y, from Breakpoint, Breakthrough, Fates Collide, and Steam Siege, and Evolutions. And there are 2 reasons for this. It is not just because they want to. I think one reason, of course, is that as I mentioned, because they overprinted it, they want to get rid of the excess product, right, from XY that they couldn't sell. But another reason actually is because they're during that time with the meta, these cards were still, there's a lot of supporter cards, I think like Brigette, that are still pretty good in the meta, and so Pokemon basically was printing it in order to keep the prices affordable to the player base. Now, my point in saying this is because with these sets, you can kind of see that they are being printed more than things like, they're kind of being overprinted, because if you take a look at the chase here, which is the, the chase here, which is the Gyarados. Let me search the Gyarados. Okay. Right, the chase is the secret rare Mega Gyarados, right? You can see, wow, suddenly the population is much higher. Now, yes, it is a very valuable card because it's actually a shiny Gyarados. It's a very cool card with Manaphy and Greninja, I think, in the background. But you know, even with such a chase like the secret Mega Rayquaza in Roaring Skies, you can see that, you know, it only has 2,000 something, but the Breakpoint one actually has 5,000, 6,000. So clearly, Breakpoint was actually printed more, but also you have to consider that Roaring Skies was open more, and the reason in particular it's open more to be played with by players, because you can see from the PSA grading like kind of proportions. Of course, there's other factors like the card quality, right? The card printing quality. People might believe that and maybe that's true to some extent, that Roaring Skies has poorer printing qualities than Breakpoint, but considering like even considering the printing quality, I do think that there's way more proportion of PSA 10s in Breakpoint, and I just in general believe that is because Pokemon way overprinted to that current kind of need, player basis need for these cards, and as a result, whatever card is left, for example, if you're just a player and you're just pulling these packs for whatever cards you need, and actually it's not a very meta defining set. I think Brigette is in this set, right? Okay, whatever. But it's not a very meta defining set. So overall, as Roaring Skies, so what happened is that many players who get access of these cards or just get these rare versions, they don't need those rare versions for playing. So what they do is they just keep them in their binders, and especially I believe after the Pokemon boom, Go boom, there are more collectors than before in this hobby, and so people start to really consider these cards to be protected, and start to grade more of them, much more than before 2016. So what happened was that, that's as a result of that, we can see not only because of a combination, this pop report of this much higher pop of 6,000 compared to Roaring Skies 2,263, it reveals several things. It reveals one, the fact that Pokemon has overestimated the demand for these cards at that time. So as a result, they overprinted the sets between 2016 and 2017 included. And second, because of the surge of the hobby, which it happened but didn't go as much as Pokemon Company thought, we can see that there are more collectors in the hobby now who are collecting these cards just to keep them in good condition in their binders, and just to look at them and appreciate the art instead of trying to use them to play in the tournaments. So this is why we can see that there's a surge in population. Now moving on to first set I will talk about is Celestial Storm. So Sun and Moon Celestial Storm. So why do I talk about this set? So some context is that so as Pokemon kind of moved from 2016 to 2017 and 2018, they slowly realized they overprinted, because especially after Crimson Invasion. So Crimson Invasion is known as like one of the worst failures of the Pokemon company, and for that particular set, the booster boxes prices went crashing down to $50 a box, and just complete collapse of the market. And so Pokemon realized they made a mistake. They have way overprinted the sets, and they may have discovered this before Crimson or right at Crimson, who knows, but essentially they have made a quick adjustment after Crimson Invasion and decide to slow down the printing drastically. And so because of that, you can actually see this in the amount of cards printed statements that Pokemon make year by, like every fiscal year. And you can see that so I'm not gonna look at that up right now, but you should be, because I remember in my mind that there is 2-point-something billion cards, or close to 3 billion cards printed around the 2016 to 2017 mark, but that actually decreased to 1-point-something billion throughout 2018 and for 2019. And so this cut down in printing is clearly Pokemon's response and realization that they have made a mistake, and they overprinted and caused sets like the two sets before, like Roaring Skies and Breakthrough, to crash to all the way to $70-$80 in the market. And so what they did is they slowed down the printing, starting from Ultra Prism, throughout Ultra Prism to Forbidden Light, into I think after Forbidden Light is Celestial Storm, into Lost Thunder, up into Team Up, all the way into Team Up. So as we all know, Team Up is a very short printed set, right? So I can tell you that it's not just Team Up, and it's also all the other sets, especially this set Celestial Storm here. So let's look at why this set, I believe, is extremely short printed. So to do this, let's look at this top chase, right? There are two top chases here. We'll look at the first one. It's also a Rayquaza. Now, you can argue this Rayquaza is less of a chase than the Mega Rayquaza, Secret Rare, and Roaring Skies, but I think people can argue either ways. I believe that before this current Mega craze, not many people like either of those cards, and you can argue, oh, maybe the Rainbow looks better, or maybe the Mega style looks better, but either way, these were the top chases. So let's look at the chase. Now this 177A, just to explain, this is not from Celestial Storm, so this is actually a card that comes from the Hidden Fates premium collection. So if you look at here, the amount of cards, actually there's way less cards than 227K being graded for this particular set, because if you subtract this, when after you subtract these 112K from Hidden Face. So what I'm referring to is this one, 177. Now this reveals something about this set, which is that look, the population is 1,213. Let's look back at Roaring Skies chase, which is 2,263, and let's see, the Breakpoint chase, which is 6,000. And in fact, this chase is way less. Now, why is this chase way less graded way less than Roaring Skies and Breakpoint? Now, my belief, after looking at the distribution and also the of the grading, and also considering all the historical what happened in history, is because one, right, Pokemon did decide to underprint the set because they learned their lesson not to like overprint and have the market crash, of their product crash, and have consumers no longer believe in their product. So this is the mistake they fixed during that time to try to recover the market. And number two, now this set, Celestial Storm, isn't that good in the kind of TCG game. So as a result, like these cards that you pull, they're not really used for the game, the competitively. Not a lot of those cards are used competitively, but they're still used sometimes just for fun, right? But yeah, not much are used competitively. And one other important thing to say is the collectors, they're still there. And the collectors that came in 2016, they are still here. And why do I think they're still here? Because I can look at these population and I see that there is such a combination of the fact that the cards aren't playable and the fact that the collectors are still here, kind of reveals why there's so much PSA 10 and so much PSA 9 out of the total PSA population. It shows that most of the cards that they pull, whether it's the players or the collectors, because they don't have much player like use for these cards, and they could just use the common version of this, after all they would decide to just keep the cards somewhere safe. And as the player also kind of interact more with collectors, they realize that collectors kind of value these cards a lot more, and so than these players do. So what they would do is they will either give it to the collectors, or they will take care of the cards themselves as well, so to sell it to a future collector, right? So as a result, we can see that these cards are maintained in a much better condition than stuff from Roaring Skies, for example. So but this doesn't deny the fact that this set is such underprinted set, with one of its top chase being only graded so little, right? So with its population being so little. And so, but of course, you could make the argument that that's because this particular card, isn't that valuable, and people don't really want it, so they don't want to grade it to pay the grading fees just to, maybe make a little bit of money, not enough to be worth grading, right? But right now, I think that this card is definitely pretty valuable in terms of you can argue either ways. I believe there's some truth to that, but overall, I do feel like this 1,000 is really pretty strong proof that this set is severely underprinted compared to things like Breakpoint or even Roaring Skies. Actually, it's still quite underprinted compared to Roaring Skies, simply because the graded copies of the Roaring Skies were it's just because they're grading stuff that they've already played a bit with before, because Rayquaza EX was a very meta card, along with Shaman EX and other cards during that time. So another card I would just briefly look at is maybe the other top chase in this particular set, Celestial Storm, and it's the Delicia 4R Trainer. Now this set is this card, because it's not a rainbow, is easier to chase. But even then, I think this card's actually more expensive now. But even then, you can see, again, there's a lot of 10s, right? But there's a lot of 10s, like PSA 10s of this card, and not a lot of like lower grades. But that's just because, from my perspective, it's just because, first of all, Licia isn't that good. I think the better card in the set is actually the Copycat or the Tate and the Eliza, I think. So this card isn't as good, but it's just more demand because like it's the Naoki Saito kind of hype, being a trainer card. And so yeah, this population again is lower than both of this and this, even though it's also one of the top chase of this set. So it does reveal, and it's relatively easy to hit because it's just a 4R, not a rainbow, right? So this really shows that this set is underprinted, but at the same time we have this shift of balance between the player and collectors in such a way that there are kind of a good balance of collectors and player during that time of the Sun and Moon era, where it's not just the players who want the Rayquaza and such for playing, and Shaman for playing, but also the collectors who want to collect maybe cards that they like or cards that they find cool to collect, right? Let's move on now to the final set here, which is actually Fusion Strike from Sword and Shield. So this set is released in 2021, in around I think, and after Evolving Skies, right? So Evolving Skies was like September, Fusion Strike was something like, wait, I don't know, maybe it's like December, something like that. But yeah, my point is this set, okay, let's look at the chase card here. It is the Gengar VMAX. Now, this set was reprinted a lot. Again, it's similar story to all the XY boxes, except they already started printing a lot, but they started printing way more after kind of the basically in response to the COVID boom, right? They decided to print way more, and the amount more is actually insane. Like the amount printed is actually insanely high compared to the Sun and Moon or even the XY era, because in XY, late XY era is kind of like 3 billion cards a year. In the middle of Sun and Moon era, it's kind of like 1.5 billion cards a year. But they ramped, so around of the time of Fusion Strike's print cycle, it became something like 9 billion cards a year. And so this is clearly reflected in the population of Gengar VMAX. We can see that's the top chase of this set. Now, looking at this card here, we can see that there is 20,000 graded copies. Even considering so much copies, I wouldn't say so much, maybe around 500 were stolen, I would say. Yeah, there's still so much, but I think 500 stolen actually is not that much compared to the grand scheme of things. But anyways, there's 20-something thousand that's being graded. And looking at the distribution of grades, you can see that most of these that's being graded is intended to be graded a 9 or 10, right? Or their intention is to grade it a 10, basically. And compared to all the previous sets we look at here, with the X and Y, with this Roaring Skies, with this Breakpoint and Celestial Storm, these chases were what, 2,000 here. Roaring Skies was 2,000, Breakpoint was 6,000 population, Celestial Storm was 2,000, something, yeah, less than 2,000. This chase card, Gengar VMAX, has 20,000, and that is just 4, 5, 6, 7x more, or 10x more of cards. And this really reveals that this set is really printed so much more than all these sets in the XY and Sun and Moon era. And I will say this definitely will play a factor in how these Sword and Shield era, how fast these Sword and Shield era will grow in the long term, like how fast they can grow in price, the booster box price, in the long term. Because this shows evidence that there's just far more box being printed, and yes, there's also a lot of box being opened because there's so many graded copies, but still more we can think about the percentage, right? 80% more open probably also means 80%, not sorry, 80, I'll say it in another way. 5 times more boxes being open probably also indicates 5 times more that is also still being kept sealed, right? So when you look at it in that kind of perspective, like it's kind of like you can project it, scale it by the same amount, the amount being open and the amount being kept sealed. So considering all this, you realize that these sets like Fusion Strike probably was printed still have a lot that are being kept sealed compared to all the XY and Sun Moon set. And so let's look at the grades and interpret what's going on with the ratio. We can see that there's a lot more 10s than 9. And so what do you think people are grading this for? And what I believe is that people are grading this with the intention of trying to get 10 specifically and not. So before it used to be kind of the case with Celestial Storm, but I think in Fusion Strike it becomes more obvious that this is the case, because even for those cases, for the chases in Celestial Storm, PSA 9s and PSA 8s, they actually go for a higher value, quite a bit of higher value, maybe 20 to 50% higher value than Raw. But when you go to something like Fusion Strike, you can see PSA 9s, their price is actually same as Raw, or sometimes maybe even a bit cheaper. And the reason why is because there's so many copies that are in near mint condition, but people are looking at these near mint copies and they're pre-grading it, right? They're pre-grading it to see, is it worth a 10? And if it's not, if they believe it's not, then they will not grade it. So what is the reality, I believe, here is that there's actually more cards than suggested here that are still circulating in raw near mint copies, like much more. And those cards specifically are those cards that maybe have off-center or some like specs that make people believe that they're not 10 worthy. And as a result, they don't grade this. Now this tells us that this Fusion Strike, I think the overall point I want to make here is that this tells me that Fusion Strike is way more overprinted compared to the like 5 to 10x more overprinted compared to, or even more compared to these XY and Sun and Moon set. And as a result, by scaling everything by 10, so amount being open and amount being kept sealed, I can safely say pretty much that I think that there's 10 times more Fusion Strike being kept sealed than the Sun and Moon X and Y set. And not only that, I can even say, not only that it's 10 times, I can even pretty confidently say there's actually more than 10 times the amount of Fusion Strike than a box like Celestial Storm or Breakpoint, because the COVID boom, although it wasn't kind of a boom like what we have now, where everybody is trying to keep things sealed now, during the COVID boom, a lot of people already begin to consider the idea of investment. So I believe that at that time, much more people after that time is already considering keeping their boxes sealed, just in the hopes of having the box price go up. Granted, it is far less compared to what is going on right now. So yeah, this is my point. And so what overall am I trying to say here is that I believe these pop reports of these top cards, chase cards, and the distribution of how these chases, how many are graded 10, 9, 8, and etc., can reveal a lot about the era, not just reveal, but also corroborate a lot of the things that happen in the era and link to why that statement might make sense or might not make sense. For example, the Breakpoint reveals that that set was indeed overprinted during its time, considering its time, because compared to the other sets before it and after it. And I think overall, what I'm trying to say here is that now that Fusion Strike has become $1,000 a box, you have to really think about, is Fusion Strike overvalued, or is Sun and Moon boxes, some of them, undervalued? Because when you look at Sun and Moon boxes, you can see that a lot of these early to mid Sun and Moon era are still actually only one 1,000 to 1.6 thousand to 6,000, right? Sorry, to 2,000. So Celestial Storm is like 2,000 something. Ultra Prism is like 1.5k, 1.6k. For Forbidden Light, Lost Thunder is also like 1.5k. Forbidden Light's 1.3k, and those are really short printed sets. And when you look at their set value, they're also pretty high actually, like 1.2k, 1.5, around the 1.2 to 2k range, 2.2k range. So sets that I talk about, these mid Sun and Moon era sets, which are 1.2 to 2.2k sets, they're also, their set value is also 1.3 to 2.2k, which when you compare that to Fusion Strike's 1.4k, actually when you look at this and think about it, Fusion Strike is $1k a box, but it is printed, as I just said, what I believe, right? It is printed 10, like it, what I believe is 10 times, there's 10 times more of Fusion Strike, or more than 10 times more of Fusion Strike than these Sun and Moon boxes. You start to think, is Fusion Strike overvalued, or is the XY set, is the Sun and Moon boxes undervalued? During this mid Sun and Moon era, boxes undervalued. And I could go either way. I think that maybe the mid Sun and Moon era are correctly priced or are slightly undervalued, and Fusion Strike is probably overvalued. That is my belief currently. But if I were to pick up something between those, I would most likely choose the mid Sun and Moon era sets like Forbidden Light, sets like Lost Thunder, sets like Ultra Prism, and Celestial Storm, because what I believe is that if these sets are 10 times more rare than Fusion Strike, like the boxes, right, and also the set value is same if not higher than Fusion Strike, what makes me believe that these, well then shouldn't these boxes, because of considering the rarity, shouldn't they also be 10 times as much expensive as Fusion Strike? So this, if Fusion Strike is correctly priced, my question is, shouldn't these boxes in the mid Sun and Moon era be $10,000? That is my belief. So yeah, this is some food for thought. And personally, if I am to put money into either Fusion Strike or something like the mid Sun and Moon era sets, I would be putting all my money into the latter, because I personally believe in their long-term potential much more.